Hello, and welcome to Stream of Conscience, brought to you by Democracy for America, Fairfield County. I'm your host, John Hartwell. Our guests today are Kate Tepper and Mike Toto, both members of DFA and also of the Media Initiative, a progressive group that works to highlight issues and positions in the mainstream media. Kate is chair of our Democracy for America group, and Mike is very active with anti-war veterans and peace activists in the Danbury area. Kate and Mike, welcome to Stream of Conscience.
Thank you for having us.
So Mike, you and Kate were both amongst a group of progressives who went down to the Wall Street protests that started 3 weeks ago. You were there on the very first day. And you were also there on Saturday when the bridge was, the people were going across the Brooklyn Bridge and hundreds of people were arrested. So why did you get involved and where do you think this is going?
John, I've been a part of a lot of different vigils, a lot of different rallies, and I thought it was important to stand with a lot of young people. That has been the most amazing thing, is the young, educated and non-educated. Not only young people, but a great cross-section, but primarily young, and that was the most important thing for me. A lot of gray beards around in my neck of the woods and have been standing with me, and it was good to see a lot of young people. The first Saturday when Kate and I were there was unique. It was something that was very different. There was no planning, as you probably have read. It was all ad hoc, and it was incredible. The recent Saturday was very different, and I'd like to go into that a little later, but go ahead.
So Kate, what happened the very first day you were down there? Because you went down with no plans, you didn't know what was going to happen.
Well, I sort of knew because I have been to many, many protests from New York to Washington, and I have yet to find anyone who wasn't helpful and being there for the betterment of the country and with a social conscience. I was inspired by the Wisconsin protests, which actually did achieve something. Yeah. And they grew. More and more people came. And it seems that you really do have to have a large body of people before anybody takes notice, particularly the media. The media blacked out this protest for 2 weeks. Even when I came home and was emailing my friends about what happened down there, which I also will like to discuss earlier on, Google and Yahoo blacked out my emails, and the excuse was that they had a technical hitch. But how strange that other people found their Occupy Wall Street emails blacked out also. So we're being censored. That is another reason why we're there. If we can't communicate through our media in an honest and open fashion, then we have to put our bodies right on the front line, and that's what I was there to do.
And you've done that many times in the past.
Many, many times. You can see how short I am. My little legs are worn right down.
So what happened that very first day? When you got down to Wall Street, well, what was going on?
Go ahead.
There was a lot of people, as Mike has said, many of them young, but not all of them were, walking around with scraggly clothes and beard. They were old geezers like Mike and I. Is it Mike and me? I think me. Anyway, there were people like us. There were a lot of people who'd actually lived in New York, particularly women who were activists and had also done the same as I have. And I think we all felt that the economic situation of our country is dire. I spoke to many people there, many of them students who have college degrees, some of them bachelors, some of them masters, and they had placards saying that they had hundreds of thousands of debt in college loans, and yet they couldn't get a job. Now our jobs are being outsourced, and it's not like there isn't any money around. There's plenty of money in the banks and the global huge companies. They're just not spreading it around, and they're not paying their fair share of taxes.
It's really extraordinary that it was either this year or very late last year that the total amount of student debt in this country now exceeds the total amount of credit card debt.
Yeah, they're
Yes.
talking about a bubble,
And
a new bubble.
well, but to
Yeah,
think about
yes.
how that happened, because when we went to school, it was not so expensive.
That's true.
You didn't have to mortgage your house to put your kid through college.
Very true.
And I've got my daughter who's gone through an undergraduate degree and a graduate degree at a private university. We helped a tremendous amount with that, and yet at the end of the day, she's come out with a massive amount of debt. So she's starting a business career already with this debt overhang. It's really incredible.
It is a shame.
Is that the sort of thing that people were talking about when at the
Yes,
protest?
let me paint a little bit of a different picture on that first day. The meeting or the gathering was to happen at Bowling Green initially, and then there was supposed to be a march to Wall Street. Well, very shortly after getting there, we found the police had barricaded the famous Bull and had more or less roped off Wall Street, so that the protesters, who were at both the north and the south end of the Bowling Green Park, were basically stymied as to what to do. There was peaceful. There was a couple of little skirmishes and scuffles, but nothing dramatic at all. It was a very noisy crowd, but a good crowd. And in fact, the police had tried to prevent them from having what they call the General Assembly by loudspeakers and noises and a whole bunch of other things that were blasting at the same time. What was very interesting is that there are tour buses that go through almost on a minute-to-minute basis. And they were cheering and yelling and picture taking and clapping and V signs from half the bus up, people, which was very obvious is that, hey, it's not only the people who were occupying who were there. There are a lot of people that are as disappointed in what Wall Street has done.
Well, one of the things when the media began to cover this event, one of the memes of the media, if you will, is that yes, these protesters are here, but they don't know why they're there. They don't. I heard one on Morning Joe a couple of days ago say something like, well, they've got a message, but they haven't figured it out yet, which is condescending, and I suspect wrong, but maybe we're not hearing what it is that was being said. So, what were the themes that you picked up? At that,
Most of it
first
was
thing?
economic, clearly,
Okay.
economic justice.
Yeah.
But let me take the other side of the coin. And the reason why, as I understand it, there wasn't planning done or a set of rules based or listed before they even met. There is not a hierarchical pecking order, so to speak, of the leadership. They purposely said, this is a democracy, this is what we want to do. We want to base our whole efforts on what's happened in Europe and worldwide. The side of the coin that I'd like to think of is that rather than have a single message that Fox News or big media or those people who clearly don't want change to happen can very easily change that message, subjugate that message, Frank Luntz that message, all of those bad things that we know could happen. Rather than that, they waited. They have now, as they put out a circular or a petition to the UN, have a list of things that they wish that would happen. They're not singular. They're all over the place because there are a lot of problems that we have. There are issues there, but clearly the biggest issue is economic.
And so it began in Wall Street, but now there are
There's Boston, Chicago. I think in Washington there's actually the beginnings of an Occupy Washington going on today.
I heard today there's going to be one. There is one starting up in Hartwell.
Yes, yeah, and there's going to be a big rally in Hartford on the 16th also. So this is a whole movement, and I think what we're trying to do, or Mike and I are on the periphery of trying to do, is to change the way our government regards the workers. You know, this was about workers. It was about justice for workers. That, as Elizabeth Warren recently said, nobody got to be rich on their own. They drove over the roads that the workers produced. They were protected by the police that the workers pay for. They were all those things. We have set the workers set the foundation so that people can make money. Good for them. I'm glad they do. However, when it becomes oppressive, when it becomes serf-like, then we need to do something about it. We need to change it. We can't change it through media. We have to put our bodies in the front line. When we were in Bowling Green, we had to have what they called a human microphone because they wouldn't allow even bull horns. And so somebody would speak and you would relay it back to two lines behind, and they would relay it back, so the message got out. So the other thing is that it is creating a cohesive mass of people who want to let our leaders know that we must have some change that makes it more equitable for working and middle class families. We can't just shove them aside because they're not important anymore. They are the country. And one of the slogans is, what was it, Mike? It was, we bailed out the banks. Was it? No, we bailed out the banks.
Bailed out.
The banks, and we got sold out.
That's right.
We bailed out the bank and we got sold out. And the other thing is that we're the 99% that don't have 40% of the country's wealth. So there are, as you say, lots of messages, but they're basically economic. And healthcare is one of those big problems.
Tomorrow there's going to be a big rally, as you know, and a sit-in, basically, or live-in or tent-in Washington, D.C.
I should mention that we're taping this show on Wednesday, the 5th of October. So tomorrow it will be Thursday in D.C. They're planning
yes,
an action down there.
An encampment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, Mike, last Saturday you were again down and
yes,
at the Wall Street, and there was an impromptu march across the Brooklyn Bridge.
Wasn't impromptu.
Wasn't impromptu.
No.
Okay,
That's
there we go.
Okay.
Misinformed.
That's all right.
So there was a march across the Brooklyn Bridge, and 600 or 700 people, I believe, were arrested.
Right.
And you were there. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Let me preface that by saying that I was there early in the morning, and the march didn't take place until 3:30. Weather was a little damp and cold, but spirits were high. As you probably have heard, because of the fact of what happened at Bowling Green and the failure of any of them being able to go on Wall Street, they have encamped in Liberty Park, what is really Zuccotti Park, which is about 2 blocks north on Broadway of Wall Street. So it's very, very close. That's where the people stay at night, and that's where all the action happens during the day. One of the big things that happened in the morning, or the late morning, was that 50,000 copies, 4-page copies or circulars of a Occupy Wall Street journal came by and were handed out to numerous people to spread to the 5 boroughs and beyond, basically telling what it was all about and giving a little history of what had transpired in the last 2.5 weeks at that time. One of the things that happened around 12 o'clock is that a bunch of women and some of the men took a bunch of the newspapers and went to Union Square, 14th Street, my old stomping grounds. I went to school in high school in Stuyvesant, so I know the area very well. And you probably know Union Square is the famous place for people in New York to yell and scream and stand on a podium. But anyway, what had happened there was called a slut walk. Sounds terrible and horrible, but it was one of the issues that some of the women had, is that, hey, we are not pieces of meat. We are, because we dress a little differently, we should not be categorized as being either sluts or inviting rape. And so that's another issue that happened during that day. Right. At 3:30, the planned march took off, and we watched down Broadway, or up Broadway actually, and then by the police, and took the sidewalk, basically. Some thousands of people, I would say probably 3,000 or 4,000 people, marched towards the Brooklyn Bridge. Was about 5 or 6 blocks away from where we started, the foot of the bridge. At the foot of the bridge, I was in the back of a pack of a goodly number. And some went, if you know the Brooklyn Bridge, there are basically 2 roadways with a elevated walkway in the middle. The elevated walkway is rather narrow, maybe 3 people wide, 4 people wide, where the roadways obviously were 2 lanes wide on both sides. The marcher heads believed that they could not all fit in the walkway, so attempted to go onto the roadway. And initially, from what I understand, although in the back of the pack you really couldn't see it, they were stopped and were told not to use the roadway. After a brief interchange, the police left, or guided us, or actually led us down the roadway, or up the roadway on the Brooklyn Bridge. And maybe a half an hour later, after we had marched to the first arch, all of a sudden it was stopped with a ring of police. And a few minutes after, there was a little bit of pandemonium happened. There was a confrontation, and most of the marchers were told to sit down and stay in place because they felt that they had a right. They were led there and felt that they should stay.
They were told to sit down by the leaders?
No, by the leaders.
Not by the
leaders.
police.
Not by the police at all. Because I have bum knees, a little bit of the gray hair business, I sort of faded into the back because I can't sit down. It was very, very tight quarters. There were a whole bunch of people in this very narrow area, small area. So I gravitated to the back. And at that time, the police had let the people in the back drift off the bridge if they did not want to confront the police. And I happened to be just about the last person before all of a sudden, one of the white-shirted policemen yelled at the top of his lungs, "That's it, we're arresting the rest of you." And a net came around, and they call it kettling. And out of the blue, it seemed, and a net just happened past my rear end. So I just escaped by the skin of my behind, I would say, and limped off the bridge. A lot of my buddies were arrested. I shouldn't say a lot, a few were arrested, and from what I understand, 700. Whether it was entrapment, whether it was something that the leaders wanted, it's hard to say, but clearly the message for the people who were in the back of that pack, we did not hear the police. And from all indications, we were basically led across the bridge by the police. So it was a bit strange.
Where do you think this is going? We've got, the group at Wall Street. We've got groups that are starting to pop up around the country. We know that the entrenched interests, the elites, are very, very strong and hardly listening. So what do you think that this can accomplish? Kate, what do you see?
I never feel like it's defeatist to do something, even if it's, we talk about voting. One vote, your vote is important, it's your vote. And if everybody says, well, what's that going to do? Well, then we have a problem. So we have to stand up. What I am hearing is that the very wealthy who do not agree with us, although many do, like George Soros, are getting a little bit worried because the movement is spreading, because it's the time in all of history. There's a time for something to happen, and I think this is the time. Even if it doesn't go anywhere, and I hope it does, what it's going to do is to say to our leaders, we need to rethink the kind of programs that you have for the people, that we need decent wages to live. We can't keep outsourcing our jobs to other countries. If we are leaders in green technology, and our windmills are being built in China. Those are the kind of things that we have to bring back to this country, and it won't come back unless we have manufacturing. We've got to bring manufacturing. Green jobs actually are one of the biggest growing things in this country right now. So those are the kinds of things, because it all has to go back, as Mike says, to the economics of things. We need jobs. Basically, this is about jobs. People are willing to work, but they can't find jobs because companies and Wall Street are sitting on money.
And the activist side of this, Mike, the groups that are supporting it. I mean, you went down with some friends. These are people that you've worked with in other peace organizations, economic justice organizations. How is this spreading through other grassroots groups that are not there on a daily basis, but maybe are in some sort of supportive role?
Well, clearly there's been some publicity by Michael Moore, by Stiglitz was there the other day.
Susan Sheridan.
A whole bunch of people that do have a voice or a microphone that most of us don't have. So that's been a help. Clearly that's been a help. The internet, social media has helped. There's no doubt about that. Even with Kate's problems, as she said, on Yahoo and Google, the message has gotten out. There's no doubt about it. The unions have joined in. That's another big thing. You asked where it's going. I don't think anybody knows where it's going. The hope is that the politics, as usual, change. Whether it's getting money out of politics, whether it's trying to get the voice that is so desperately crying for some help, economic as well as everything else, out in front of the public, we don't know, but we're going to try. And that's the big thing. As Kate says, all you can do is try. Keep banging on that door, and maybe they'll let us in.
Well, thank you very much for coming and for all that you do. And
let's
come back together and talk about this as it develops, because I think it's not going away. I think it's going to be there for a while.
It's not going away.
Yeah.
I'm going to be there to the last leg.
Thanks again for coming.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, John.
What do Enron, WorldCom, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, AIG, the countries of Iceland and Ireland, and mortgage-backed securities have in common? Each of them was given investment-grade ratings by S&P until just before they collapsed financially. It's a stunning record of incompetence, one that should have put this flawed rating agency out of business in any true capitalist system. And now Standard & Poor's, perhaps as a make-up call, has downgraded the debt of the United States. Yet even while doing so, they made a $2 trillion error in their calculations, once again demonstrating why no rational economic player should pay any attention to them. And that's what happened. In the market panic that followed the downgrade, U.S. Treasury bills, which in theory should have become less desirable because of allegedly greater risk, instead became even more of a safe haven as investors pulled massive amounts of money out of stocks. Bond yields dropped to the lowest level in recent memory as the market, in short, gave the U.S. government a huge vote of confidence. Alan Greenspan said it best, "There's zero chance that the U.S. won't pay its debts." Why does this matter? Why should we care? Because the fake debt crisis that has been dominating Washington is driving public policy in completely the wrong direction. If you're a capitalist, as I assume you are, then the markets are telling you that U.S. debt is not a problem. Individuals and foreign governments are willing to lend us seemingly unlimited amounts of money at ridiculously low rates. It's only within the U.S., and most particularly within the Republican Tea Party, that this is an issue. People wearing funny tri-colored hats with only a tenuous grasp on reality or history have been driving the debate, and it's time that this ended. There's been a lot of loose talk about bond vigilantes forcing the government into harsh austerity programs to protect bond ratings. But here's what the manager of one of the nation's largest bond funds says we need to do. First, ease refinancing rules for homeowners who are underwater on their mortgages. Second, reorient our education system to produce more math, science, and engineering graduates. Third, spend immediately on infrastructure in order to put people back to work. In other words, create a demand for labor. Fourth, set up a public-private partnership to lend to small businesses, something that banks apparently are not willing to do. And fifth, combine entitlement spending cuts with broad-based tax increases to get the debt under control. We have a jobs crisis. We have underemployment crisis. We have a declining personal income crisis. We have a crisis of confidence. We need to put people back to work, and we need to protect wages and benefits so that those who have jobs can actually support their families. We need to stop raising tuition at public universities so that young people can get the skills they need without taking on so much debt that they'll never get out from under. We need universal health care. To those who say we can't afford all this, I say, look at Germany. The strongest country in Europe, the Germans do pay very high taxes, but in return get strong job security, universal health care, and 6 weeks of vacation in a booming, export-driven industrial economy. In America, we've cut taxes to the lowest level since Harry Truman, and we hear calls to reduce them even further, and yet have none of the benefits. No job security, longer work weeks than any other industrial society, a patchwork of health care that favors the rich and delivers very poor results when compared to other nations, and mountains of personal debt. What's wrong with this picture? A lot. It's time for a change, not a rhetorical change, but deep, systemic change. It's time for a change we can really believe in. This has been a Stream of Conscience commentary. I'm John Hartwell. Thanks for watching. That's our show for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. If you live in the town served by Cablevision from Norwalk, you can catch our show every Wednesday on Channel 88. If you're interested in learning more about progressive political action in Fairfield County, please check out our Democracy for America group. We meet the first Wednesday of the month, 7 to 9 p.m. at the Silver Star Diner in Norwalk. We always welcome new members. Remember, change is possible, and you can make it happen. This has been Stream of Conscience, and I'm your host, John Hartwell. We hope to see you again soon.